Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, Tag the Tank 12. I'm gonna call me, I don't really care, and welcome back to World of Tanks. Today we're going to be talking about the last and final updates or buffs to World of Tanks that have happened in patch 1.13. There is already a new patch coming in, 1.14, and we're going to be seeing some new Czechoslovakian tanks, mainly heavy tanks, that will actually come in at starting from tier 8 or tier 7. I'm not entirely sure, but probably tier 8. So we're going to be talking about the IS-5, the Object 730, and the ISU-130. But probably the focus will be on the ISU-130, while the IS-5 will be still talked about real fast, but we're going to be having some gameplay of the ISU-130. So what has changed with the IS-5? Now, one of the main changes is that they increased the gun depression. So now you have 7 negative degrees of gun depression. That is quite nice to have on a Soviet heavy tank. And that is actually very rare. I don't think a lot of Soviet heavy tanks have 7 degrees of gun depression. Especially with this low profile, having 7 degrees of gun depression is really nice. Just to think if you have a little ridge in front of you and being able to aim down while covering your upper and lower plate. Then what they also changed was the gun dispersion values. So the dispersion values have gone down by a little bit, like I think 17%. And also if you're turning your turret, the gun dispersion values have gone down by quite a drastic 35% on accuracy while you're turning your turret. So that means you're going to be able to aim in faster when you're turning your turret, you're going to be more accurate, and overall this tank will handle better in those engagements where you need to turn your turret. So that's a really nice update, and I think that's something a lot of people will be enjoying quite a lot. Moving on to the ISU-130, before we or the characteristics and all the things that have changed, let's talk about the ISU-130's history. The thing is, this tank has been in the game for quite a bit, but they've only recently, I think a year or two ago, started selling the ISU-130 because this was a very rare collector's item back then, but it has been a part of World of Tanks for a very long time. So when they, decided to sell it to the majority of the players that are able to buy it, or to everyone, I think players noticed that the ISU-130 had a couple of flaws. So the ISU-130 comes packed with a 130mm gun, and this 130mm gun had a very good rate of fire. It's probably the ISU with the highest DPM output, as you can see, 3440. That hasn't changed at all. That is also with a good crew and gun rammer, but still a very good rate of fire in this vehicle. What it did have to sacrifice to be able to use a 130mm gun is it had to sacrifice penetration, it had to sacrifice the gun arc, and some armor probably. I think armor and survivability, like hit points, it lost a little bit of that, while the ISU-152 has a bit better armor and it has more HP. But now they've decided to buff this, and they did buff it quite significantly. So the average pen has gone up from 215 to 238 millimeters. The shell velocity of the 130mm AP shell and the premium AP shell, which is I don't even know, the shell number 201743. So what happened is they actually changed the shell velocity. Shell velocity prior was, I think, something along the lines of 700 or 800 meters per second. So that is a big increase. The shell flies faster. The premium shell does more damage, but that's always been the case with this gun and with this tank. But they both have better pen. Now the pen on the premium shell has increased by a little bit to 212 millimeters, and that is probably going to be the average. But that's pretty interesting to see right there. So these characteristics have been changed. Then also the gun arc. Prior, the gun arc was only 2 degrees, I think, to the left and 10 degrees to the right. And that has changed quite drastically to 10 degrees on both sides. Now you have a much better gun arc if you're playing this tank, so you don't have to turn it around all the time. What also changed is the mobility. So this tank has gotten a buff in the engine department, so its engine power has been increased from 520 to 600. That's an additional of 80 horsepower, and that's probably going to be quite nice with this tank. Other than that, I think it also increased the amount of shells that you can carry. As you can see right here, you now can carry 35 shells instead of the 22, I think. So that's quite a big in total, and that's about 50% additional ammo capacity. That's pretty damn impressive. So, yeah, the ISU-130 has gotten the major buffs. The IS-5 has gotten some little updates. The thing is now, let's see how well the ISU-130 performs in game. Probably were, I wouldn't say necessary, but I think they're, appreciated by the player base who own the ISU-130. It still has that crazy 8.5 second reload time with a gun that does 490 alpha damage. And if you can pen every single shot, you can do 3,400 damage a minute. That is pretty damn crazy, right? But either way, we're gonna try it out. This is live action commentary gameplay, so hopefully we don't mess up completely. This is a nice tier 8 matchup. We have only one light tank on either side and just 3 tank destroyers. Majority of the players in this game are heavy tanks and medium tanks. And I think this is probably the best kind of setup that you can have. You have 1 artillery piece on each team. You have 1 light tank, you have only 3 tank destroyers, and you have quite a bit of heavy armor and medium tanks. That makes this a lot more enjoyable for heavy tank players and medium tank players, and probably also tank destroyers, because tank destroyers don't have to have like huge camp fests all over the place, and you don't have any kind of real movement in the game, which usually tends to happen when you're playing as tank destroyers. The only thing is there's only 1 light tank, so a light tank is very, very vulnerable and also very precious. If you lose the light tank, you lose your eyes basically, or the ability to scout fast, and that's something that you probably will not want to happen. So right there we've already spotted a Brigada 46. He's in the middle, and it looks like our team has pushed him quite drastically here. And I really like that when the teams do something like that, where they just don't hold back and they push into aggressive spots early on, and they are not afraid of, using those positions. That can entail quite a bit of chaos though, and it can be quite dangerous on the other hand, for players to, get lost into this frenzy and then get slaughtered one by one. But either way, I think I much rather have players that are a bit more aggressive than players that sit in the back too long. What's really awkward is that I'm doing that right now. So, well, I'm playing a tank destroyer, so at least I have a little bit of an excuse. But I haven't really been able to utilize this TD very well at the moment. But that rate of fire really, it shows you just how nice it is to have an 8.5 second reload time with a gun that is as punchy as this. But obviously 238mm of pen, that is still on the very low end for even tier 8 tank destroyers. So I think that that increase of pen is quite a nice thing, especially since this is like an old school premium ammo implementation, where the premium ammo doesn't have the best amount of penetration, but it actually has more damage output. So that's something you only see on this tank and the ISU-130. What we really don't want to happen is we don't want to get spotted by them, because if we do get spotted in this ISU-130, we are only here with 1,000 HP. And unfortunately, our team that has pushed quite aggressively and quite valiantly into the enemy path right there was completely annihilated by the heavy tanks that decided to push the H and J line And I could have maybe been more effective right there if I had set up down in the south, but I decided to go against that and maybe just set up here close to the base. Unfortunately, now we are lacking the real flank protection on either side. We've just lost our tank fighting the hill, and now this is going to be a really awkward kind of scenario for us and our team. What we really have to do right now is we have to break this building. I'm just going to use a high explosive shell because I really don't use high explosive that much anymore in this game. And funnily enough, they spot the T-69 and I have a high explosive shell loaded. And I track him. But either way, tracking or killing, I take both. That was really important that we get this T-69 out of the way. It's not Type 69, it's the T-69. That's really important that we can now support these guys with our firepower, and thus I'm going to break that building real fast. And obviously that was a horrible decision because I broke the building. I was just viewable through that, or you know, the bush was transparent, and obviously just like that I made myself visible to the enemy, and that's not something you want to have happen. That actually penned. I didn't expect to hit that one on the TS-5, but because he gave me like the side armor for a real fast second, I decided to, you know what, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna see how much damage I can do right there. And now it's a very awkward kind of scenario where we have quite a bit of armor in the middle. We have one tank over there. We have two tanks that are fighting or just holding them off. And we have a T-32 who is in dire need of support. So yeah, we should be able to deal with these guys with the TS-5 and the 703. Oh, the Emil is actually making a move. Okay, we can actually do some damage to the Emil. That shot went, I have no idea where that shot went, but didn't allow me to deal any more damage to the Emil. The defender was showing his rear or something like that. No way would that defender otherwise have gotten penned by Emil 1 as easily as that. Or he must have shown his side. But to be fair, like damage-wise, we're not doing too bad. We still have quite a few rounds remaining. Obviously, with that high rate of fire, you want to be able to keep on putting out the damage. And we have to pen this IS-3. We hit the screen or something. There's an ISU-130. Oh, he just put a big shot into that Panther 2. I'm gonna put some into the M46 Patton Korea. And I have to see that. I hope this T-32 doesn't push like that. No, please fall back. Don't do it. T-32, you're just about to get yourself killed. There's a TS-5 coming in from behind. There's the TS-5. He's just opened fired on the tank destroyers that were sitting over there. They were out in the open, and to be fair, these tank destroyers, I don't have the feeling that they were doing much. And artillery has really lost the efficiency right there. Somehow not being able to do any real damage to that TS-5. Don't know where that shot went. And I've just been spotted, so I'm gonna be main target number 1. And it must have been either the TS-5 or the... yeah, it must have been the TS-5. I cannot support the T-32 anymore, unfortunately. Because if I drive forward there, I'm going to be a main target. I haven't been able to pen the IS-3. I tried to get through his side skirt right there. And now we are in a very dire situation. RGW, Tiger P gets knocked out. We're about to get knocked out. Yeah, right there from the M46 Pat in Korea. And now our SU-130 PM is the last one remaining in the corner. Still gets one last kill. But I think it was much more... this guy was needed, like they were needed on my 1-2 line. So we could have actually helped them out, the T-32. I wasn't really able to do any damage to the IS-3. And he's just going to get stormed by the M46 Pat in Korea and probably some other vehicles in a second. Oof. I think the Pat in Korea is going to die. It's going to be a really awkward scenario for the Pat in Korea because... nope, he's going to live. The IS-3 came in just in time to save his ass. Either way, it was kind of a good game damage-wise, but it would have been a better game if we had managed to turn that one around. We were a bit unlucky that... well, maybe it wasn't our luck that was missing more and gotten ourselves more involved, but if you're only right there with 1000 HP, I think you're much more useful if you do help out from the back and you use your rate of fire to your advantage. Unfortunately, I mean the rate of fire is pretty good, but the dispersion is one other thing that this tank isn't the best at, but the aim time is quite nice. And I think overall with the additional ammo, which is quite important because this tank does run out of ammo very quickly, or previously it did run out of ammo very quickly. Having that additional ammo, having that very nice 238 millimeters of pen now, it's not overpowered. It's not like you can pen everyone, but you can pen them if you know the weak spots. And if you have the opportunity, if you're in close to mid ranges. Long range engagements still are a bit awkward, but if you can get like a medium tank, a light tank in front of your gun, it's going to be really awkward for them. Either way, I think the ISU-130 is definitely a very nice tank. I still enjoy it, and yeah, maybe I'm going to make a review on the ISU-130 if I have not already done that. Until then, I hope you guys have a good time, and I'll see you on the next video.